Yep.
Ready? Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Am I good with the audio? Everybody can hear me fine, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, welcome to our 5th quarterly public monitoring forum.
Move your foot so I can move it between. That's good.
So this is our 5th quarterly forum. We are the consent decree monitoring team, and we're going to get right into the agenda. But first, I want to bring up our host and a good friend of mine, Reverend Al Hathaway, and he's going to give us an invocation and respect his house that he graciously provided for us tonight.
It is good to have you here. It is good to have you as a part of this sacred space, this space that has been here since 1905. It's been an anchor, but it's also been a place of respite, where people can come from the storms outside and can come in and have a place. But it's also been a place where people have planned, deliberated, and a lot of positive actions that have occurred in Baltimore and in Maryland have in fact originated just out of here. And so you are a part of that. And so with that spirit, I offer this invocation. Thank you for the continuation of spirits that believe that tomorrow can be better if we work today. We ask that you empower each person here. We ask that we break down any walls, break down any disparities, break down any disagreements that will cause us not to work together, because it is better that we work together. In your name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Al. So I just want to introduce the monitoring team that's here. Our lead monitor is Ken Thompson. Seth Rosenthal is the deputy monitor. My name is Ray Kelly. I'm the lead community liaison. And the guy you see running everything from behind the camera is our community engagement coordinator, Donnell Wharton. So I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight and staying engaged in the process. We know it's a lot going on, but if we want to see change, we got to make sure we persevere and we move forward. So I'm going to first ask, does everyone in the room have any kind of familiarity with the consent decree? Great, so I won't have to go into a whole big shebang of what it is and where we are. So what tonight is going to be about is, one, letting you know where the BPD is in the process of the consent decree, what still lies ahead in the second year monitoring plan, as well as what the monitoring team has been engaged in and doing throughout that process. If everyone has an agenda, my community organizing makes me adamant about the fact that we listen as much as we hear. So we're going to kind of speak on a piece, and then we're going to address your questions for an equal amount of time. Then we're going to move on to the next piece of it. I'm going to be real concise when I cut us off and move on to the next one, because we already waited a little longer, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So I'm going to hand it over to the legal heads of our team, and we'll kind of talk about where we are right now in the consent decree and what the monitoring team is actually up to.
So good evening. And first of all, let me thank all of you for coming out on this balmy, I guest that's not true. I shouldn't say that. It's cold outside. It's nasty. So I'm really happy that you guys saw fit to take some time out of your busy evenings to join with us. And we think that the consent decree is a very, very important piece for reforming the police department. I mean, the vast majority of police officers are good, hardworking folks. There's some that have some issues, but the department for years has had a number of issues, and it's my view that for the community and for the police department and for the members of the police department, the best thing we can do is to fix that police department so it's a place where the good police officers are proud to work, and the community feels good about the officers who are serving and protecting them from the bad guys. So I'm glad you came out this evening, because I do want to go through a few things with you. I'm glad to hear you know about the consent decree. Most of you, I think I've seen on multiple occasions, so I know that you know about it. But when we first came into this position back in October of 2017, after the judge appointed us. We had to spend a few months, literally 3 to 4 months, figuring out what the first-year plan would look like. And you say, what's the purpose of a first-year plan, a second-year plan? Well, in order for this to work, you have to have a plan. We are not going to be able to obtain the reforms that the consent decree requires if we do it in a haphazard, ad hoc way. The only way this is gonna work, and the only way we're gonna have sustained change is if we do things by the book. And so we spent the first 4 months, we had, I think, 4 or 5 community forums. We met with police officers. We tried to figure out, by reviewing data, what the department looked like and how the community felt about it. And it was clear to us early on that the department had a ton of problems. It had poor technology, staffing was bad, the internal affairs department needed a lot of work. And so it was important for us to look at this project as something that the only way to address it was essentially to deconstruct the department. And so when you deconstruct the police department, one of the things you're gonna have to do is look at the policies. And people will say, well, what's important about policies? Well, the policies are the backbone of a police department. And so we spent a good bit of time, actually the first year, helping the department revise its policies in a number of different areas. And I am happy to tell you that I think the BPD has right now some of the best state-of-the-art policies of any police department in the country. We're very proud of the work that the department did over the year. We're very proud of the progress they made because, again, we think that those policies are a good start. That's just foundational work. And the other thing we had to do as a part of foundational work was to look at some studies. One of the important studies was the staffing study. I think those of us who grew up in Baltimore and have been around for a while, we kind of recognize that the department was short of manpower and womenpower. But it's one thing to think it, it's something else to know it. And so the department, I think the Ford Foundation or the Police Foundation, one of the two, spent a fair amount of money to do an actual data study to figure out what the staffing looked like. And it confirmed what most of us knew. This department had some serious, serious problems with staffing. The other problem was one of technology. The department was operating on a 1985 platform. They had something called Lotus Notes. They had, it had to be addressed. But in addition to these kinds of foundational issues that we had to look at, as you can imagine, anytime you're in a project this big, sometimes things will happen that you didn't plan for. And one of the things that happened early on in our work was the Harlem Park. I don't know what to call it. It was a debacle. But out of bad things, good things happen. And so we were able to look at that debacle where we knew there was a poor incident command structure, where folks were being stopped, where there was a huge, perimeter that shouldn't have been as large as it was. We learned from that, and the police department learned from that. And that actually became a learning experience because I've been to, I think, 3 or 4 police-involved shootings over the last year. And I can assure you that when I go to these events now, there is a structured incident command staff in place. Things are operating by the book. And so I think that the police department learned a lot from that lesson. It was an unfortunate situation. It was horrible for the folks that live there, but you now, at least what I've experienced over the last year, you don't have the perimeters being so large that people can't go back and forth to their homes. The police that are on the scene are respectful of the people in the community. So I would think, and I do think, that was a really, really good learning experience. Now, the other thing that happened shortly after our involvement in this process was the gun trace task force. That was, again, a debacle of monumental dimensions. It was a serious case. It involved maybe a few police officers, but we all know that if it was only 8, there had to be others who were involved in this. But again, and when I say the gun trace task force, those of you who, I think everybody in this room knows what I'm talking about. I'm talking about where these police officers were involved in basically the highway. And they were robbing people, they were planting evidence, they were doing really, really bad things. And quite frankly, I would say to you, I know the community hated what they did, but I can assure you that the members of this police department, those who work hard and get up every day and risk their lives to protect you, they probably hated them more than you and I did, because it just brought a dark cloud on that department. Well, you know, again, it was an event that you can learn from. And so we look at these things as not only as a learning experience, but it kind of gives us an idea of what we need to address. So during the first year, there's some really, really big issues that we looked at. I mentioned staffing, I mentioned technology, but, and this is my personal view, and I think it's a view that most of the members of my team have, until we're able to fix internal affairs, and that is fix a unit that will fairly and appropriately deal with police officers who engage in misconduct, we're gonna have one hell of a time trying to rebuild the trust between the department and the community. And so we have spent a tremendous amount of time over the first year working with the internal affairs, which is called the Office of Professional Responsibility, or OPR for short, trying to restructure that department. That unit still has some problems, but I can tell you that they've made a lot of progress over the year. A lot of things that they were doing that didn't make any sense, like sending officers out on detailing meaning officers who should have been working that department were sent out to cover parades or cover crime scenes. I mean, you took good police officers, good investigators who should be looking at police who've done bad things and should have been investigating. Well, they were taken out of the mix. And so it prolonged those investigations. That was not a good thing. The other thing that's important that I think has happened over this year, civilian oversight is incredibly important. And for years, the Office of Professional Responsibility and the Civilian Review Board, for some reason, they couldn't get their act together. For the first time, and I'm happy to report, in the history of the department, there is now a protocol in place between the Civilian Review Board and the Office of Professional Responsibility, where you now have a system in place where the police department and the OPR, or the Office of Professional Responsibility, can share information with the Civilian Review Board. And that's very helpful, because those folks who are civilians who are reviewing police actions now get pretty much, or will get pretty much the same information that the police have, so that they can do their investigations in a fair way. These are just some of the top spots that I want to talk about. The other thing that I think that has happened this year that's really important, the staffing study was done, and out of that, a staffing plan will have to be developed. Now, one of the big issues we've had over the past year has been the lack of leadership. We didn't have a permanent commission, and it's incredibly important in an organization like this that you have permanent, strong leadership. Again, I've met Commissioner Harrison, met him several times. A number of members of my team know him well. They think the world of him. When I read about him, I'm just happy to see what I'm reading. I think we have a real gem in Commissioner Harrison, and I'm really, really excited to be able to work with this commissioner, because I think he will be able to bring this department to the 21st century. I think he has the experience, having worked with the consent decree, but just as important, he has a tremendous amount of experience in the internal affairs areas. He was there for 10 years, so he knows how to root out the bad cops. And that's important, because I think when he takes over, and as he's done, as he has taken over, as he begins to do his job, and as he begins to set the right structures in place, we're gonna see a department where the good, hardworking men and women of that department are gonna feel that they now have a stake in making sure that the department stays clean. And he will do, I think, a good job of cleaning up internal affairs. I think he'll do a good job of cleaning up the department. So we have leadership now in place that I think will be helpful to this process. It's also important to have him in place, because you really can't ask him to adopt a staffing plan unless he has some skin in the game. He's got to have some involvement in that plan. Well, he's going to do that, and we expect him to be able to review the data that we put in front of him, to look at it over the last few months, and to come up with a plan that will address Number one, safety issues, which of course the community has every right to expect, but also to do it in a way that will be sustainable. And so, again, with leadership in place, I think we'll have the technology that will come around. We have the staffing that I think will be fixed. It's gonna take time. This is not gonna happen overnight, but you gotta give him the time to do it. But I am really excited and have a lot of confidence that he'll get the job done. Now, part of staffing also engages and involves the academy. I mean, part of staffing this department, which is some 500 short, and particularly short in patrol, means you gotta bring more police officers in. A lot of that is gonna have to come from new recruits. And so, again, I'm really happy to report that what I've seen so far, it looks like the department is taking it very seriously in terms of trying to recruit local folks. They have a plan in place to actually recruit bigger numbers, and the numbers are really quite good. They've actually quadrupled the number of people who are applying to the department now, where I think last year or year before last, they were having 20 a week. They're now up to 80. And those numbers need to be bigger, but they're at least getting applicants. The other thing that needs to be done, which is where they are deficient, while they're getting numbers, they're having a hard time processing. But that's on the way to being fixed. So my thinking is this: I think given the fact we've got a new commissioner who's got good leadership skills, he knows where the problems are. I think he'll be able to fix a number of these problems. And again, if we got to give him time as a community to get this program in order and get his program in order. But I think if we give him the time, we'll have a department over time that we'll be proud of. So with that, let me turn it over to Seth, let him talk a little bit about what the second year monitoring plan looks like.
So Ken has talked to you for the last 2 minutes about what has happened under the first year of the consent decree, and I want to talk a little bit about what to expect in the coming year, what's going on now, right now, and what will happen in the coming year. But before I do that, because we've been talking at you for a while, I do want to pause to see if there are any questions about what's happened in the last year, and what BPD has accomplished and what it hasn't accomplished, what the monitoring team has accomplished and what it hasn't accomplished.
Don't be shy. Yes, sir.
Well, I'd just like to know, where's the police union in all of this?
You know,
Because you didn't mention anything.
No, and
internal affairs,
you know,
didn't mention-
the union, I think, to some extent, has been somewhat helpful. I mean, the new union contract, I think is gonna be helpful in terms of staffing. I mean, they went from that, what was it, 4 days a week, 10 hours a day, to a 5-day, 8-hour-a-day schedule, which I think is gonna be helpful in terms of staffing. I mean, one of the problems that the department has had, I mean, when you don't have enough people, number one, and you then work the people you have to death. I mean, not only are they not gonna be good at their job because they're just tired, but the morale is going to be bad. So I think, you know, to the extent that the union, has a part to play, I think that from what I understand, and of course we're a monitoring team, we don't represent the city, we don't represent the police department, we don't represent DOJ, we actually represent the judge. But from what I can tell, it looks like there's been some cooperation. You don't have the typical, you know, knuckle fights that you sometimes see. Does that mean that it's all hunky-dory? Of course not. I mean, the union has their issues. They have an interest that they are to protect, and the department and the city has an interest they want to protect. But I think,
bad cops, you know.
well, that's a whole different issue. I mean, that bad cops, union or no, has their job to do, and I'm not gonna sit up here and trash them. But at the end of the day, if you've got the right commissioner in place, you've got the right process in place, the union be damned. I mean, anybody that's a bad cop needs to be dealt with, because I think the good cops deserve that. Yes, sir.
I heard a lot about rooting out bad cops, and yet you're saying the majority of the police officers are for the improvements. I'm wondering about training.
I missed the last thing you said, I'm sorry.
You said the majority of the police officers are also in support of improvements. I'm wondering about staff training. There's all kinds of training that people do to reduce, de-escalate conflict. There's things like the IDI. There are a lot of, really good bias prevention and bias reduction techniques. I'm wondering, I didn't hear anything about that.
I'm gonna turn it over to my.
That's a perfect segue into what I was about to talk about, because the principal work of the first year, as Ken said, was revising policies, putting in place the foundation for reforming the department. The second year, the focus is going to be on developing training curriculum and delivering training. And 3 areas are going to be focused on during this second year. First is use of force, and I think that's what you were just referring to. Second is stop searches and arrests, and third is fair and impartial policing. And so right now, in fact, as we speak, we are working, when I say we, I mean the Justice Department and the monitoring team are providing technical assistance to the police department to revise some draft curriculum that they have been working on for the last couple of months on use of force, and to include certain aspects of fair and impartial policing. So there are new policies in place on use of force, new policies in place on fair and impartial or non-discriminatory policing, and kind of the first tranche of training that officers are going to undergo on these new policies, that's going to be rolled out in the next few months. So the training curriculum actually is out there for public comment right now. If you go to our website, you can see the draft curriculum. If you go to BPD's website, on their Power DMS system, you can see the draft curriculum, and you have the opportunity to comment yourself. I mean, it's all there. It's a 115-page lesson plan together with PowerPoint slides, case studies, active discussions on scenarios that officers are going to be presented with. It's all there for the public to comment on over the next couple of weeks. Once the police department receives that public comment, we'll then try to integrate that public comment into the next draft of the curriculum, with input again from us as the monitoring team in the Justice Department. We'll put out the curriculum again a second time for a second round of public comments, and then it will finalize the curriculum, and by the end of the spring, it will begin delivering that training to all officers at the Academy in a 2-day chunk. There's an e-learning component to the curriculum, which officers will have to take online before they do it in class, and then there is a 16-hour in-class component to that use of force in fair and impartial training curriculum. So all of that is supposed to be completed by the end of the summer. All the officers sitting here in the room are going to undergo that training, just like everybody else in the department. A lot of it's going to be old stuff for them. They'll have undergone it. They'll have undergone that kind of training before, but it's going to reinforce some of the principles that you were talking about, like de-escalation and things like that. The second tranche of training during the next year is going to be on stop searches and arrests. As many of you know who've been following this for the past few years, the Justice Department, among the series of constitutional violations they found, or patterns and practices of constitutional violations they found, were that people were being stopped, searched, and arrested without the proper justification, and that people were being stopped, searched, and arrested based on their race, right? And so this next tranche of training is going to be focused on that, stop, searches, and arrests. BPD is actually now, while it's revising the use of force training curriculum that I was just talking about, is in the process of drafting that curriculum on stop, searches, and arrests, which is going to be sharing with the monitoring team in the Department of Justice in the next month or so. And that will go through the same kind of process during the latter part of this year that the use of force curriculum is going through now. Officers will, after that curriculum undergoes public comment, gets revised, undergoes public comment again, gets revised and finalized, officers will then undergo a 16-hour block of training on stop, searches, and arrests. And then finally, at the end of the year and going into next year, we're going to do the same thing on fair and impartial policing, or non-discriminatory policing. So that's what's in store with respect to training over the course of the next year, between now and next March or April. And it's a lot to accomplish. As Ken said, the Academy is currently understaffed. One of the requirements of the monitoring plan is that the Commissioner authorize the transfer of a sufficient number of staff to the Academy so that this training can be effectively implemented. BPD is most of the way there in terms of transferring the required staff to the Academy, but they still have a few officers left to transfer to the Academy. And they're also working on revamping the training facilities, because as the judge himself has remarked in public hearings, where the training takes place now, and I'm not asking the officers here to comment on the training facilities, but it is not adequate. For a department that aspires to be a first-rate police department, it is not adequate. It is not a proper front door to the police department that the training academy ought to be for recruits coming in or for experienced officers undergoing in-service training. And so the idea is to revamp those facilities, and right now, the department is looking to partner with the University of Baltimore to transfer all training over to the University of Baltimore and to have support, both academic support, but also facility support from the University of Baltimore, so that we can actually have, the city can have, the police department can have a first-rate training academy.
Let me talk a little bit about
Sure.
de-escalation, because that's part of your question. There are two areas that are incredibly important. One is police interaction with folks who have behavioral disorders, and the other is interaction with youth. And the key word is de-escalation. I mean, our youth assessment report came out yesterday. I've had a chance to look at it quickly. It's on the website. Everybody can spend as much time as you need to review it. But the bottom line is, what we are trying to do is we help the department reform itself. Is to emphasize the need to de-escalate where possible. Now, there are occasions when, bad things happen. I mean, and that's just the way it is. But the mantra that we are working on, and I think that the department is beginning to inculcate, is to de-escalate where possible. So when you deal with folks with behavioral disorders, the object is, where possible, is to divert them to a behavioral clinic. If they need help medically or psychiatrically, then that needs to be taken care of with kids and their children. They need to be dealt with as children. And so you try to do things to divert them away from the criminal justice system. I mean, the studies that people have looked at indicate when you actually put a kid in custody, I mean, you've put that kid in a bad spot for a good many years. So where you can divert that kid, if a kid is walking down the street with a bottle of Colt 45, as we used to do years ago, there's no need to lock him or her up and send them over to juvenile services. That's maybe a time when you don't even give them a side piece, take them to grandma. If you are in that community and you know the kid and you know it's her family. But the idea is to de-escalate where possible. So that's, I think, is a really big thing that's going on and will go on over the next few years.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
So my question is kind of similar to theirs. Earlier you used the narrative, most cops are good.
Yeah.
I'm curious to why that narrative is used. Let's say, for instance, there's 20 of us in here and 19 of us are good and one of us is bad. Sometimes that one either gets exposed or be held accountable. And then my second question is, I guess personally, why do you trust the police, and why should this community trust the police?
That's a good question, and I think the police department is going to have to prove that it should be trusted. And I think they do that over the next few years by conforming to the requirements in the consent decree. The consent decree is designed to rebuild the trust between the community and the police department. And so when you talk about stop searches and arrests, when you talk about use of force, when you talk about dealing with youth, when you talk about dealing with folks with behavioral disorders, if you have, look, you're always gonna have one or two bad apples, sir. I mean, there's no system anywhere when you're talking about 600,000 people and you got 3,000 police officers, that every one of those police officers, every one of those citizens is going to do the right thing every day. But the object is that with the training that the department is getting, with the leadership that I think is in place, I think that the good police officers, through their actions, and it's gonna take time, but they have to gain and earn the trust of the community. I'm not asking you to accept my word for it. I'm asking you to watch them, to pay attention to what they do. And when they're wrong, report them. But when they do good work, remember that too and give them credit for it. Because at the end of the day, we live in a system, whether you like it or not, where we need police to protect us. And so we want good police.
So this is another one of the things that we're going to be begin focusing on in the second year. In the first year, because we were trying to figure out what data was available to look at and how to look at it, because candidly it's in a state of disarray, and BPD will admit that it's in a state of disarray. We had to figure out, okay, given that it's in a state of disarray, what can we do to assess BPD's performance to let you know, okay, is this a department that can be trusted? And if it can't be trusted now, what steps does it have to take using data, you know, to earn your trust? And so what we're doing this year, we have sort of 3 different areas of what we call compliance reviews that we're beginning this year. The first, which is underway now, is we are undertaking a systematic examination of files within Internal Affairs, the Office of Professional Responsibility, to determine whether complaints are being investigated accurately, whether the outcomes are the right outcomes based on the evidence, and whether, if discipline is appropriate, the right kind of discipline is being imposed. So we're undertaking that kind of systematic review now, and that's going to be undertaken for the next several months, and then we'll produce a report saying, hey, this is where Internal Affairs is doing things the right way, and this is where it needs to improve. And I can just say on Internal Affairs specifically, anecdotally, you know, we, Ken and a couple of our other team members a year ago went in and asked to review a sample from 2016 and 2017 of about 60 to 75 different files to see, okay, what's in these files? Are they well organized? Were investigations done the right way? Were complainants being contacted and communicated with regularly? And what they found, and again, this was not scientific, the kind of more scientific compliance review that we're going to be doing now of Internal Affairs, was that no, I mean, things were in disarray. The files were in disarray. The investigations were not as thorough as they needed to be. Communication with complainants wasn't what it was supposed to be. The same group undertook an evaluation, again, a very informal evaluation just 3 weeks ago of files from 2018. And we looked at 100 files from 2018. Again, not in a systematic way like we're going to be doing, but really just, we spent a day in Internal Affairs just taking a look. And have to say that comparing what it was a year ago to what it is now, those files are in a lot better shape. You know, there's still some shortcomings, don't get me wrong, with respect to file organization, with respect to complainants being communicated with the way they should be. But in terms of the thoroughness of the investigations, reaching the right outcomes based on the right evidence, all that seems to be going in the right direction. That's good. So when you talk about trusting the police department, you know, it's that kind of improvement that I think the community needs to see in order for the community to say, okay, now we see that you're really trying to make things work, trying to make things better. Again, like I said, that's just anecdotal. You know, we're going to be doing a more systematic review to show you where things are over the next couple of months. But that's the kind of thing we're going to be doing this year. We're also going to be doing the same types of things with reports on stop, search, and arrest. So we'll be taking a look at stop tickets and incident reports, which capture stop, search, and arrest data. And then we'll be doing the same type of thing on use of force, taking a look at use of force incidents to see where the department stands now on how it's handling situations that might or might not require the use of force, and whether it's reporting uses of force accurately. So all those types of reviews are going to be taking place this year. We'll be reporting out our findings to the community, and I think that establishes the baseline for determining whether this is a department that can be trusted now, and if it can't be trusted entirely now, what it needs to do to earn your trust going forward in the next several years.
Seth, talk a little bit about the survey, because that's actually something directly under your purview, and
Yes.
the importance of that.
Good,
Can I
it's very,
add something to that before you
yes,
move
please,
on?
yes, sir.
The young man spoke about trust. We have in-service where officers have to attend every year, MPTC, in order to, do our duties. And during those courses, at the end of our in-service, we have a bonding exercise with at-risk youth in the city throughout the school system. A lot of it is not publicized, but if we mess up and make a mistake, it's publicized. I don't see the cameras, the media at these events, outward bound, where we participate, not in uniform, in regular clothes. Kids have no idea of what we do. They just know we're there, hey, to help them along the way throughout the day. They don't realize that we're police until we introduce ourselves at the end of this program. Not one outlet, not one entity. But Lord forbid something happened on the street, it makes the news. We do this almost every year. Southwest Baltimore, engaging our kids. That kind of publicity, it doesn't make the news. So what they see is officer so-and-so did this, officer so-and-so did that. But the good things that we do doesn't get the publicity. So you're looking at all the bad and negative news, but when we do things positive, like engaging kids in school, kids that wanna be gang members because, somebody told them, you know, hey, I want you to do this, and the principal called us to come in there to diffuse it. And we come in there, not only diffuse it, hey, you know what, we apologize. After intervening on, you know, issues like this. You don't see this, you don't hear about this. Let officer out there go out there, he made a mistake, you know, he had a bad day, what happened? But the good stuff, it doesn't compare to the negative. So of course we're gonna get the negative publicity. So we do have a lot of officers in the community. They get out, engage with the community. Even before this happened, we continue today to engage the community. You're not gonna see that. Why not? Because what? It doesn't make good press. Bottom line. I'm just telling you like it is. We do our job, we get it. We are from the city. Every day in, day out. You're not gonna see us walking the street. You're not gonna see a camera following us. But let something happen, they're right there. Officer so-and-so, highlight, front page news. We're saving lives. What? We're not locking people up every day. We're diffusing. Other alternatives as you spoke, hey, you know what, if you do this again, it might be a different circumstance. This is what we do every day. Not only us, but other officers throughout the city. Yeah, we get a bad rap, but a majority of our officers in Baltimore City, they can give their heart and soul every day. Every day. You don't see that. But Lord forbid they do something wrong, the whole world condemns it. We're out here to, you know, to make a difference, and that's what we do every day. I can't say, you know, hey, I love this community. I've been here more than half my community, half of my time in this police department. There's nothing out here that I wouldn't do for these citizens, and they know this. They know this. They know me by name. Hey, he's a good one. They are good one. They know that. All police aren't bad. We engage every day on the day, on the corners, in the toughest spots in the city, in West Baltimore, on foot. So to say that, it's an embarrassment to me, it's an embarrassment to my coworkers, it's an embarrassment to all the men and women in the Baltimore City Police Department. We out here every day. You see our faces, we out of our cars. So to say that, I take offense to it, nothing against your question, but we out here every day. Underpaid, every day. The lowest paid in the city, giving out, putting our lives on the line. We leave our house, it could be our last time. Every day. So to hear that, I take offense. I give my all. My sergeant gives us all. My partner gives us all. The men and women, every day, we're trying. We're making a difference. Quiet as kept. You're not gonna talk about that. But I just couldn't sit there and let that go by. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm passionate.
I
This is
just
what
wanna
do.
follow, I wanna follow through on
Can
that.
I ask Officer Lee one question? How can you help us? Get the information about what you're doing. You got any suggestions?
Sure, we have a media relation council, media relation session in the police department. They had that, I mean, I can't do it because it's above my rank and file, but
But most people are text and they're not reading newspapers and things. How can, with the technology, can you bring things to those out? Because the media is not doing it.
what I would do in each section of the police department, we have 9 districts. We put out information. I can't attest for other districts, for our districts. We put it out there, what we do. I send it to my commanders send it through the department. It's out there. Most times you have activities on the board, for instance, Lafayette, Pennsylvania. You see the events. We have parades that we do for the community. My partner, he does a cookout, free, don't charge anyone. It comes out of our own pockets. Our pockets. Not anyone else, for the community. Every year, Pennsylvania Lawn Street. This is what we do for the community. We don't ask for publicity, we just want change like everyone else.
But they need to know, young people, they need to know that you're doing it. You know how I found out about this meeting? My church vote. Church vote. I did no Nelson on the TV, you know.
Yes, sir. Just to let you all know, there was nothing that mandated that we show up tonight. We weren't ordered by command to be here. We weren't told to go attend the meeting to see what's going on, to see what they're saying. We came because we're the neighborhood coordination officers for the district, and we felt it important to be here because we deal with the community. So I'm here to listen to where we are in the process, to listen to your concerns, not so I can be like, wow, we're this far behind, but so when we leave out better, I can communicate it to the officers that's still out there on the streets. Hey, we're making progress, but still more needs to be done. We need to do this, we need to speed up the timeline. We gotta get in front of this, we gotta stop doing that. There was nothing that said, hey, you 3 have to show up to this consent decree hearing tonight. And we came because we cared. We came because we wanted to be a part of it. We came because we wanted to sit there and listen.
And we want you to keep doing it, man. We don't want you to get frustrated because,
No,
look, we all get frustrated.
no,
We
no.
have, we come to these meetings and sometimes people don't like the pace that things are happening. But my job and our job is to do this in a very deliberate way so that at the end of the day, whether it takes 5 years or 10 years, we have a sustainable product that shows reform. And so, I'm asking you guys, just like I asked the community, I mean, you guys are good cops. You need to show it. You need to give us, and your department, really not us, you need to give the department ideas in terms of how they can do a better job of showing the community police involvement, because that is part of the consent decree.
And I think we gotta recognize that that's what indirectly our role is to kind of help coordinate the trust building process. I'm gonna say that being from Central West Baltimore and having that trust issue that's indigenous to our community, that I recognize that this process builds bridges, because Officer Lee, for real, I've worked with for 8 years on Pennsylvania Avenue. He calls me, he looks for turkeys, if he got clothes to donate to the church, where this stuff has been happening, where the trust building process for a community has to start with a Chuck Lee, because who has that reputation? But that's what this process is about, is we have to engage and spread the word about effective engagement so more people can know what the community collaboration unit is doing and more people can get involved. I know just from being in community about your turkey giveaways, I know what you do for the church, I know him and his partner out of their pockets partnered with us, and what y'all donated, like 30 backpacks this year, and it's not even in Central District. They just have worked with us so long that that's just natural. They don't look for recognition, we don't look for recognition, we just make sure the community is getting what is needed and seeing that positive interaction between the both of us. So I think the key to it is to recognize that there is no overstating trust between community and policing, but there are plenty of seeds. I mean, 11 years ago, I was the most adamant activist against the police department, but I can pinpoint by name 100 officers in my phone that I can call for different situations, and they come for the community. So I understand, because I'm from here, that overall there isn't a general trust for police in our community, but this process is about establishing that trust and building those bridges to what they're doing, because I know it's a lot of y'all doing good.
Let me finish this off, because I want Seth to talk a little bit about the survey, but let me go back to your questions and back to what you said. One of the reasons why it's so important to have meetings like this is so that, and I mentioned earlier that it was important to the consent decree that we assist the department in being able to hire more local folks from the city. In other words, we think it's important to have far more police officers on this department who come from the city for a lot of reasons. They know the city, they know the folks they have, and they're invested in this community. Well, how are we going to get young men in Baltimore City to want to join the police force unless you have officers like Officer Lee or let me get the other. Yes, but the idea is you have to have these kinds of officers who come to meetings like this, who can talk to someone like you, because you're the most important. As important as they are, it's more important that someone like you listen to an Officer Lee, understand what he or she is saying, and then you can go out and help spread the word that, guess what, guys, if you really want a better police department, why don't you join? So this is why meetings like this are important. And I'm sorry, sir, you had a question. Yes, sir.
Yeah, just wanted to ask, how does the monitoring team provide their information on a regular basis to the community? It sounds like not only updates on what the team is doing, but also updates on what the police is doing. I mean, the good and the bad. I think that's something that's already built into the monitoring team.
Yes, sir.
I'll let Ray take that in the first
So-
instance, but you can answer that question yourself.
Yeah,
Thank you
I
for
want to
teeing
hit
it up.
the big balls.
So, I mean, community engagement this year is definitely focused on access. So that's my role on the monitoring team, is making sure that the community knows they have access, and I'll use and leverage my own credibility and community towards the monitoring team to make sure that they can come to me. So one thing we're doing every month now is our newsletter. And I feel like we jumped to the next part of this agenda, but I don't want to break the flow. I like that people are answering questions.
Talk about what's happening here too, so this is
Yeah.
good.
So what we're doing now is we're putting out a monthly newsletter just to let people know ahead of time what's going to happen in the upcoming month, what happened in the past month, what ways can you be involved coming in. We're also we have now a community news section where communities can post their public safety initiatives or whatever they want to get out to the public, they can put in our newsletter. One thing we're starting in the next newsletter is community champions. We found out today that our host here, Reverend Hathaway, has actually took it upon himself to build a substation for the Central District Police officers. Nobody funded it, nothing. He just decided that he doesn't want to see a police officer sitting in a car for 4 hours, so he made sure they got a bathroom, a microwave, somewhere where they can get water, where these type things have to come out. And it's our role to present that. We are not the BPD, we are not the DOJ, and we are not the city. We are here to gauge what's happening on street level. So we're here to get that input from you, and everyone knows my push is always to also formalize that input. So we want people to be engaged along the way through this whole process. You heard Seth speak many times about public comment periods and public input, where your public comments and your input go on the record, and it actually influences change. I've been a witness to it. Ken talked earlier about incident command training that we were all attending with a few community members, where during this training, the community member voiced an issue he had with an engagement, and they changed it right there. So really, that type of innovative access is what we want people to know the consent decree entails. This is, in my opinion, the most community-informed consent decree that there is in this country. So there was a lot of input given from community members, and it's mandated throughout that nothing gets changed until the community has an opportunity to view it, vet it, and comment on it. So there's a sign up in the back. We want to make sure we can get as many listservs. Our engagement this summer is not going to be focused on having events. We're trying to come to events. We're trying to get on agendas and tell people the access that they have. We want to go to people engagements and organizational engagements this summer, just so we can be out there and talking to the people, just to gauge what's happening. We want to make sure that we're present on events that we collaborate on with the police department, or any community group collaborates with the police department, so we can get both that positive, negative, and real-time feedback. Like Officer Lee said, there are many things. We had over 1,000 people at Pennsylvania Lawns last year for a community cleanup, and the partners were the police department and the community, and we had maybe one news camera there. And that's the type of recognition we want to make sure that is in front of the narrative about Baltimore City. So community engagement is the priority. We want to make sure that people know what's going on, sign up for these listservs, reach out to us in any way, and we'll come, we'll speak at your church, we'll speak at your organizational meeting, whatever the case. All of the liaisons, we're now full. We have a neighborhood liaison in every police district. They can bring flyers, they can tell you what the what they do. They can make sure that if someone wants to speak to the team, that information comes to us. This whole process is based on collaborative trust building and transparent accessibility.
Just a follow-up, aren't those liaisons also meant to report the positives that these officers are doing wherever it's reported, and they are reporting positives?
Definitely. And we don't feel like we only want to report reprimand and complaint. We want to be able to show positive engagement. We want to show that as a city, as a whole, we're moving forward. This process has had multiple obstacles, like Ken said. They've thrown the kitchen sink already. They ran out of stuff to throw at us.
Still being thrown at us.
Right, but the process has to continue. This is a federal court mandate, and no matter what cogs and gears are in place, that mechanism has to move forward, and our job is to make sure that things are progressing as effectively as possible.
You know, Officer Lee talked a little bit about community engagement, and that is incredibly important, but, you know, that is a step to something even higher, which is community policing. Because at the end of the day, what we're all looking for, when you have a police department, you wanna be safe. I mean, we may like Officer Lee, but we're not asking him to come here because we like him. We're asking him to show up and his other partners to protect us. Well, one of the reasons why it's so important to have community engagement and to develop trust between the department and the community is because the police need to know, and they need to get feedback from the community that they're serving in terms of what's happening. I mean, you know, there may be prostitution on Druid Hill and Mosier Street, or there may be, you know, drug sales being done on some other Lawrence Street or whatever. Well, you know, sometimes they can see it, but sometimes, you know, I don't care how many police you put on in the department, you could have 5,000. They can't be everywhere, every day, every minute of the day. They need the folks who live in that community to cooperate. And we're not talking about snitching. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, if I live in a community and I want to be safe, I should feel comfortable calling Officer Lee and saying, look, Officer Lee, you know, Joe, who's really a nice boy, but he's being led astray by these rascals that are coming over here from Poplar Grove Street. Can you look at this? Well, it's up to him to figure out how to do it. If they're kids, if he's been trained right, he, you know, should be able to do some things. But the point is, at the end of the day, what we really want are police officers like Officer Lee who understand the concepts of community policing so that we can build this department so that we can all be proud of it and so that we can all be safe.
Yes, sir.
I have a question about the police cameras. No, I just answered. Number one, when are you supposed to turn the cameras on? Number two, are you penalized if you don't turn them on? And number three, what are the regulations for using police cameras and what circumstances?
So the body worn camera.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I mean, you know, if you go to the police department's website, you can see what the policies are on body worn cameras.
Can you tell me?
Yeah. So, I'll go on my phone and get it for you so you can look at it yourself, when we're done.
Have Officer Lee tell you.
Officer Lee can tell you. Sergeant Davis can tell you. But, so there is a policy on the use of body worn cameras. In fact, and that policy was revised last year. It's been finalized. The officers are now going to be trained anew on the use of body worn cameras. In fact, they're getting new body worn cameras, department-wide, this summer. And they're going to be trained on the new cameras under the new policies later this summer. Okay, so right now the policy basically said, but I'm going to ask the officers to correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, basically, as soon as they respond to an incident, the camera comes on, and the camera, should be capturing a half a minute before they actually turn it on, and then they don't turn it off until the incident's over. But that's department policy, right? And there's no exception to that, right? And if they violate policy, they get reported for violating the policies. In fact, there's a review unit within the police department that determines whether for each call for service or each incident involving an officer, the officer activated his or her body-worn camera at the right time and didn't turn it off until after the incident was over. And if they violated that policy and they didn't activate it on time, or they didn't turn it, or they turned it off before the incident was over, they get written up and it goes to the Office of Professional Responsibility, Internal Affairs, and there's an investigation done, and they would get disciplined for the violation of that body-worn camera policy. I will say that just 2 weeks ago, when I was at Internal Affairs, looking at these 100 files or so, there's a lot of them that involve the violation of the body-worn camera policy. I think most of the newer officers, perhaps all the new officers, kind of get it, and they're following it, but some of the older officers who've been around for years and years and are just now trying to get used to using the body-worn cameras, every time they respond to a call, sometimes they're slipping up, and they get called on it. But I think department-wide, you're seeing more and more compliance with that policy, but it is a hard and fast rule. I mean, there really are no exceptions. I mean, there are exceptions for certain units, like detectives in homicide when they're out investigating a case. Like they're not turning on their body-worn camera every time they're conducting an interview with somebody in the neighborhood where the murder took place. But if you're talking about patrol officers, that body-worn camera is coming on or should come on with every interaction they have with the civilian.
Thank you. Yeah.
Really basic question. How complicated is it to wear and use and turn on and turn off a body-worn camera?
Probably not complicated at all, and that's why I think you find most of the younger officers are doing it. I think the officers, well, it wouldn't be my age group, but the older officers probably are not in the habit of doing it. Because at the end of the day, when you think about it, it's really to everybody's advantage they turn them on. I mean, the public, certainly you wanna have whatever's going on captured, but if I'm a police officer, and if I'm a good police officer, I sure as heck want whatever I'm doing captured so that in case somebody, and every now and then people get mad and they say things and they're not always true. That body-worn camera will show what really happened. So it's really in everybody's best interest to have those cameras turned on.
And officers recognize, Judge, I'm not speaking out of turn, Judge Berdar has said this in a public setting on several occasions. I mean, body-worn camera actually is, one of the greatest developments in policing over the last 20 years, in part because of what Ken said. I mean, officers, I should say police writ large may have been against it 10 years ago, but now that police departments are used to using it, they recognize that, hey, there's nothing that tells the truth like what's on the body-worn camera, and in most cases, the body-worn camera footage will end up backing the police officer's story about what happened. And so police officers have come around very quickly to the use of body-worn cameras because they recognize that, this is the story of what happened, and, by and large, it ends up backing up what officers are saying happened.
And if you are a bad cop and you are full of swell, and you don't want your event captured, you're not gonna turn it on, but you know what? You do that enough times, people who are, aren't stupid, and you come in, Ms. Gray?
Treasure.
Ms. Treasure, you come in and you say, that officer did A, B, and C, and I won't use Officer Lee, I'll say Officer Leiball said, wait a minute, that's not what happened. And they said, well, Leiball, this is the third time your cameras, I'm not gonna believe a word you say. So, I mean, I think that at the end of the day, the body-worn cameras are really probably one of the best things that have happened, not only for the department, but for the community.
But they're little, they're worn on the shirt. You turn them on how?
You just press the button.
I double tap the middle button twice to start recording and hold it to cut it off.
Are you wearing one now?
I am. It's off because I'm in the meeting. but
Sure.
This big button, what I have to do is tap it twice, and then I tap it, it starts recording. How long will it record? As long as it's on. As long as it's on. Until I cut it off for the battery guy.
And when you're in a long investigation, you're actually obligated to go get another body-worn camera.
If our cameras die, when they hit a certain percentage, you get an alert saying your battery's about to die. Our policy, you have to come in off the street. If your camera is operable, you can't respond to calls, you gotta come in and change.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
So Ken was asking, yes, sir.
So, what is the status of the survey, and who is being surveyed, and what are some of the questions? maybe you can give the basic purpose for the
I
survey?
think we paid you, that's exactly what we wanted to do.
I was just about to say that. So anyway, in fact, I was.
You could pay me later.
There are actually 3 different surveys going on. And I was actually at Morgan State University today because we're working with the Institute for Urban Research at Morgan State. They are the lead researcher in our survey. We're obviously working with them and they're working under our guidance, but they're the social scientists and they're doing it. And that's the community survey. And what they're doing is they are going, there's been a survey form that's been developed. It's a relatively lengthy form. It's not like an online survey. It's supposed to, be both quantitative and qualitative, where they're taking a look at community attitudes on policing and in this police department in particular. We don't feel, actually somebody asked this recently, we don't feel like we can put the survey instrument, the actual survey, on our website at this point because the survey is live in the field and we don't want to compromise its integrity. But it's a survey that the methodology generally is that we are, or Morgan State is, going to be using this survey with upwards of 650 to 700 residents selected at random from across the city in a way that's representative of the demographics of the city by race, ethnicity, and gender. And we'll be, we still have a little bit more of data collection to do, so we probably have a month more of data collection to do than the folks at Morgan State. We'll synthesize the data and we'll prepare a draft report that we'll review, and then we'll publish a report on the findings of the survey, community attitudes towards police, probably near the middle of the summer. So that's the first survey that's being done. The second survey that's being done is a survey of people who have been recently arrested by the police here and have just been processed at central booking. That survey is being done by researchers from the University of Toronto who've done this kind of research before in collaboration with Rose Street Community Center, which is a local grassroots organization that is devoted to surveying returning citizens. That survey will probably be conducted toward the end of April, beginning of May, with, again, the results to be tabulated and ultimately published somewhere towards the middle of the summer. And the third thing that we're doing are focus groups of police officers, and this is also in the planning process. Those focus groups are probably going to be done near the end of May, again with the results to be published toward the middle of the summer. And the idea is I think there are going to be 8 different focus groups of police officers, patrol officers and detectives, sergeants and lieutenants, divided by rank, also going to be segregated in some respects by race and ethnicity and gender, so that we can get specific perspectives on police officer attitudes towards what's happening within the department now. So all those things are happening simultaneously right now, with the idea that 3 different reports on each of these survey instruments are going to be published over the summer.
Thank you. So as I understood it, so this survey of the community is taking place now. So
Correct.
people are being interviewed, and that will be finished at the end of April, did you say?
Hopefully data collection will be done by the end of April, yes.
Okay, so all those surveys will be completed. Are they in-person surveys?
Yes, those are in person. So what we decided was that the best way to get the most candid responses and to really survey attitudes was not just to do quantitative research by telephone or to do online surveys, which are notoriously unreliable scientifically, but rather to interview people in person, because we wanted to gather quantitative data on people's attitudes so that they're answering questions where they're checking a box, but we also wanted qualitative data where we're getting their narratives on their views on the police. And so the idea was to do both of them because we thought that was what was most important to capture community attitudes in this city about policing.
Okay, thank you.
If I could just comment from a perspective of a pastor of a local church in a this community. It has been an amazing experience because I see both sides. I see when there's some incidents of violence, loss of life, when a family comes and sits and talks to me and asks me to have their funeral service or their memorial service there, and I agree and have that. And when we have a movie matinee. And the officers from Central District come and actually become the movie attendants. I see it when we have clothes giveaway, and the officers are the ones that are there actually having people try on clothes to size them and clothes to give away. I see it during food giveaways when they also do those things as well. So it's an interesting dynamic, but it's a dynamic where I believe we as a community have to play a role. I mean, we have to play a mediating role, we have to play a facilitating role, we have to play even an advocacy role. I never forget, I had 15 young people one summer, and I was walking them to a historic Samuel Coleridge Taylor, and they saw an officer on the street, and they said, "Why that officer is foul?" I said, "Foul, what do you mean? You just see the officer, how do you say he's foul?" He says, "Well, he's the one that makes us lay on the, sit on the curb when he talks with us." And I realized how deep-seated these things are in a neighborhood. But then I have the other side of the coin, when I walk with officers and they know the names of people that I see. And so I think we have to strike a good balance. I think it becomes important that institutions like churches, like faith institutions, really be in it, really commit to it. And I know, I just want everybody to know, I know all my officers know, that we are committed to be in it. We don't want to have persons targeted for some reason because they may look a certain way or even act a certain way. We want everybody to have a sense that there is form, that there's an opportunity to go another way. Just sitting in this room, just a week ago, we had 20 of the young men under the jurisdiction of parole and probation sitting in here to have a conversation with them. We had lifers that had spent hard time talking to them about their experiences. And in the room with the police officers, playing also that same role. So I just think that I know that the consent decree has its responsibilities, and thank goodness that you do, but I think we as a community have responsibilities as well. And I think that we have to be very optimistic that as we work together, things will be better for our community as an outcome.
Reverend, I couldn't echo it any better, and quite frankly, it's not consent decree and church, it's both, they're combined, they're not mutually exclusive. I mean, the consent decree really is nothing more than a roadmap, that's all that it is. It's designed to help the department recruit better police officers like Officer Lee and Sergeant Davis and guys like that. It's designed to help them get the best training that's available. We try to get the best practices in the country so that we have the best police officer. At the end of the day, we want good supervisors, but at the end of the day, the monitoring team is not going to, we don't do this. It's gotta be done by the members who wear blue, the men and women who wear blue, the community, and the church is part of the community. So we need a church like this to engage folks so that we can have these kinds of discussions, so that folks understand that all policemen are boogeymen, and where police understand that all community members, these 13, 14-year-old kids who wear their pants down, below their but they're not all bad. I smacked my kid when he was little, don't arrest him. But he would do it anyway. But the bottom line, he was not a bad kid, that's just what he wanted to do. And that's why it's so important that we get as many police officers who live in the city, who understand the culture, to work in this department.
I just want to check in right now on 7:30, and I'm appreciating, this is what I've been pushing for. I feel like the first step to any collaborative action is a conversation. So that's the kind of atmosphere I want to create at all of our engagements or wherever we show up. We want to make sure that we are listening as much as we're talking, because it's a lot of information that we can throw at community just in processing a whole bunch of mumbo jumbo legalese that no one can understand but these two guys, and really that's not the priority in this community. I think we have to kind of highlight the effectiveness of this engagement and give people that hope that change can actually happen. And I'll tell a story of something that just happened since we did our Facebook Live. So one of the questions from a community member on the Facebook Live brought into question something that the commissioner said about there wasn't a policy in place about when to release body-worn camera footage to the public. Seth addressed it at the meeting, and he was like, he didn't know, he would look into it. And since that Facebook Live, there's already been an initial draft of that very policy already circulating, where just that direct engagement had an immediate influence. So that's the things that we want to highlight about this process, where this process is moving forward. There is multiple opportunities to engage, have access, and actually influence the outcomes of these policy changes and what comes next in the consent decree. We have to make sure that, like Reverend Al said, that we are assuming our role. So I said that we have this community-informed consent decree, which it is. So there's a lot of community input that made these mandates, but we have to continue in our role of informing this process, because like he said, we're not going to be patrolling the streets. We're not going to be living in every neighborhood. We're not going to know what's important to you, what's your immediate priority, unless people come forward with that information and unless they engage in this process. And I see that Ms. Wanda just came in, so I want to introduce you all to your Central District Neighborhood Liaison, Wanda Watts.
Hello.
So now, like I said, we're full with every police district has a neighborhood liaison. Ms. Watts will be a person that you can reach out to if you want to contact the monitoring team, or if you want to have brochures or bulletins at your event, if you want to have her come and set up a table or speak to your organization about how they can be involved. Right now, you have access to that conduit right here, and every district has one. While we're recognizing our team, the brilliant question for me was Howard Watts. Howard, what's your last name?
Roberts.
Roberts, that's what he is. He's our Eastern District Neighborhood Liaison. You might have seen him running around and acting crazy with the Archdiocese of Baltimore, which is his real job. But that's another example of being committed to this process. I can remember engaging Howard years and years ago when we were working on Civilian Review Board reforms. And he was willing to come in and bring his group and formalize testimony. And I think he saw then that we are the change. We can influence it. The system, the process, and everyone else involved is waiting for us to speak up and do something about it. And now he's a neighborhood liaison. It's probably 6 years later, and he's still perpetually involved. So that's what it's going to take to keep moving this thing forward, because I don't want people to think that we stopped because we didn't have a commissioner. We stopped this week because of what's going on. This process has to keep going. We have to remain focused on the monitoring plans, and we have to make sure that community have access so we can continue to move forward.
Would you happen to know the liaison in Northwest District?
So the Northwestern.
Pam Curtis.
Pamela Curtis.
Okay, thank you.
Come on, don't be shy.
Any more questions? We got 25 minutes.
I'm gonna say one thing.
Yes.
Quick comment. I was born down the street. McCullough home sits on the block I used to live in called Brewer Street. There was a police district right on the corner of Pennsylvania and Dolphin. It was a police district right there at Pennsylvania and Dolphin. you're going back, and I was born in 1946. I have seen the police department evolve from the black and white. You always have white shirts and black pants, and they walk the streets.
Yes, they do.
And you had the utmost respect for them. I mean, I didn't see any patrol cars. So, in a sense, I think you all are talking about, let's make the city great again, so to speak, to kind of return to those days. Every officer, just what the guys were talking about, they de-escalated, they knew where you lived, they set you on. My brother and I used to collect wine bottles because you could make some money and take you down on Grove Park Division Street, and you got paid for the glass. And they would stop us. Say, "Now you going home to your parents? I'll tell your mother home," because they knew everybody. I grew up with that image of the police department and had the respect and love for them because of that. Although what I have seen over the years, I still didn't think it was reflective of the core police department to this day.
I want to ditto, we knew our officer.
And I just wanna, go ahead, sir. I just wanted to comment on just that fact. So you're right, there was a lot of good practices that kind of left the department as we shifted into more the war on drugs type, zero tolerance, broken windows mentality. And we did lose that ownership that the police department used to have. They had their own beats and it was their beat. But one of the things the consent decree does is demilitarizes the police department. So you're right, we wanna go back to direct engagement, foot patrols. We recognize staffing issues and all of that slowed that process down. But there's an effort ongoing through the police department, the Office of Innovation. I mean, you'd be amazed at how many times throughout the process in the past couple of years, there's the bring back officer friendly. Something as simple as bring back officer friendly, and that has happened. So really, in conversation, community, what happened with the concept of officer friendly was we went from having this safe haven. We were taught to go to officer friendly, tell him your phone number, your address, he'll help you get home. And even those of us that live in high crime neighborhoods where we did see police misconduct, we could have a contrast. So we see officer friendly, he's a good cop, officer knucklehead on Monroe Street is a bad guy. And that's kind of what we lost when we lost injecting a white shirt and a engaging personality to our youth. We have now a whole generation that only have that one-sided perception of what police officers are. We only see them in our community when they locking up our cousins or doing something like that, where we have to recreate a balance of good cop, bad cop, so people can gauge, so cops can once again, for lack of a better term, be individualized. So it can get back to Officer Lee is a good police officer. Sergeant Davis is a pain in the ass. We gotta make sure that we create that paradigm where not all police officers are the same and not all residents are the same. And that only comes through process, through engagement, and of course, we have to recognize that they have to have enough officers to do it. So really, I was an adamant advocate for foot patrols. I still am. I know that's the solution, but I also know that if we got foot patrols for 6 hours in every district, then we are super short-staffed on calls and everything else that happens in our city. And right now, that wouldn't be conducive to public safety. So what we have to do is continue to build these relationships, continue to get the young people involved, because everybody wants indigenous officers from our city. So we gotta start highlighting the positives of being a police officer. One thing we've done throughout this process with the Office of Innovation is create different prototypes of how we introduce children and young folk into policing as they're coming up. And one prototype idea was to create a ROTC type structure in the high school. So we have ROTC for the Army and the Air Force and the schools where
program now?
well, it's a conceptual thing that came through innovation. It's been getting a real good reception where now, just like we grab these youth at 9th grade and we indoctrinate them to military procedures and codes of conduct and disciplines, we can have a ROTC or a junior cadet component that does the same thing with policing. So by the time they are ready to graduate high school, they're ready to just step right into a cadet program. And that's how we grow an indigenous police force. Yes, sir.
One thing I haven't heard is retention of officers. What? Retention, officers that go through the academy, in 5 months to a year, they're gone. The ones that come through the academy, they don't stay long. Have you done a survey, why they're leaving, what's the purpose of them leaving?
Yeah, the answer is yes, and well, let me, because I was surprised to hear this myself. I learned for the first time that retention isn't really the issue, and I didn't believe it until I saw it. Apparently, and it's kind of strange because the numbers are almost the same. I think it deviates, I think this goes back to 2011. You have between 243 and 246 each year in terms of officers leaving. That's and that's not a good number any way you look at it, but the real problem has been recruitment. And there are a lot of reasons for that. But we are looking at how to retain. One of the things that I looked at today, and you're right, most of the officers a lot of the officers we lose in the first year, the first 3 years. But the way I looked at a chart today that showed the pay increase. Now, for entry-level officers, I think Baltimore City is still next to the lowest. I think Anne Arundel County pays less, but everybody else, Montgomery, Howard, whatever the county, they all pay more.
That's supposed to change on the new contract.
That should change, but the other thing that I noticed is that in year 5, instead of being the lowest or the second lowest paid police department, if you stay here 5 years, according to this chart I looked at, the Baltimore Police Department is the second highest paid in the state. So that is one way of looking at retention. I mean, but look, you've got to give the members of the police department, I don't mean just you guys, I mean, you got to be happy with your work environment. You got to have equipment. You know, you don't want to walk around in a beat up car and you got your buddies who live in Baltimore County who have cars with all the state-of-the-art computers. You want to be able to brag just like they do. I mean, let's face it, we all have egos, and that's a big deal. Your workspace is your car. And you also want to be proud of your department. So I know I shouldn't say that I know, but I have a feeling most police officers don't take that job just for the money. They take it because they want to do good service. They want to be paid enough to be able to take care of the family, but you're not looking for the highest income. What you're looking for is a decent work environment where you're paid, where you can take care of your family. And I think that's something that we as the consent decree, we're looking at that. We have experts who look at that stuff, and we're trying to build that into the system because we know that even though the retention rates may not have changed that much, it's a huge loss to lose a police officer within 1 and 3 years after you spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to train that person.
Questions? Let me ask this. There was a fear that with the change in federal administration, that would be some change maybe in the consent decree.
Trump?
Yeah.
Let's be real.
Right. With the change in justice, does that?
No.
Okay. Why don't you say that clearly?
And I will. Well, look, you know, I say it. I don't want to be flippant about it. I think we're probably lucky in one respect that the ground troops from the Department of Justice have figured out a way to insulate themselves from the people in Washington. And so up to now, they have been very aggressive and they should be, because this is I didn't go through this in the beginning, but this is a lawsuit. You got a plaintiff on one side, defendant on the other. It's an adversarial process where both sides fight for their turf. And there was a concern that when the Trump, and I should say the Sessions Department came into play, it came into play because he doesn't like consent decrees, that somehow the effort on the part of the Department of Justice is going to be, less aggressive than it should be. Well, that's not the case. I mean, this Department of Justice has been very, very aggressive. Sometimes we have to slow them down because they ask for things that we think are we try to be fair to both sides, because that's our job. But I can tell you up to now, they have been very aggressive. But let me say this as well. Even if they had been, it wouldn't have mattered, because my monitoring team, when we took this job, and we worked for a judge, and it was clear to us, the instructions he gave to us was, if the DOJ is not gonna do their job, you guys are gonna have to do the job for them. And so we would have stepped in to make sure that this process was being carried out in a fair way. Now, we're not plaintiffs, and we certainly aren't gonna be as aggressive as DOJ, because they ask for things that we sometimes put the brakes on. But you need to be assured that even if the DOJ changes and something happens over the net, that's not gonna change this process, because those of us who are working on this, we have 25 people on this team, all are progressive folks. We've got some really good police commissioners like Chuck Ramsey, and T. Bowman, and Hassan Hayden. These guys are progressive, first-rate police chiefs who believe in consent decree reforms, and so it would happen anyway.
I just have one hard question, like, there has been a problem in Baltimore Police Department for years about racism. Have y'all addressed this problem, and how are you gonna do it?
That's my white friend starting that
Thanks,
Ken. You turn red?
So one of the core areas of the consent decree is called fair and impartial policing, right? And that's one of the first areas under the consent decree that the police department, under the monitoring plan that we've created, the monitoring plan that we've created, are tackling, right? And so the police department last year revised its policies on fair and impartial policing, which are meant to combat racial profiling, combat discriminatory policing. This year, as I mentioned about 45 minutes ago, one of the first areas that officers are going to be trained on under the consent decree is fair and impartial policing. Again, with the idea of combating racial profiling and discriminatory policing. And one of the things that we're going to be looking at, at the outset, when we're doing these compliance reviews, which I mentioned, looking through stop tickets, looking through incident reports, is trying to see whether or not there are patterns of race-based policing. So this is front and center in terms of consent decree compliance for us. It is one of the things that we and the judge are most focused on. And so that's what I can say about it. I mean, I will say that, in fact, in 2 days, we're going to have a 3-hour meeting with Judge Berdar on this very subject, the subject of impartial policing. With us, the monitoring team, the department, police department, and the Justice Department all making presentations to the judge about progress under that area of the consent decree. So it is something that when the Justice Department and the Police Department negotiated the consent decree, they had top of mind. It's one of the key areas of the consent decree, and it's one of the things that the department presumably is going to be working on hard, and that we're going to be monitoring hard over the next few years.
One of the things I think you may have also been looking for when you said racism, and maybe I'm wrong, but I'll talk about it anyway, is racism within the department with respect to the police officers themselves. And we recognize that, and that's part of the recruitment, hiring, and retention policy. I mean, while they're not, you don't do quotas, nobody wants to be sued. There is a true recognition that for a department to be effective, it has to be diverse. It's silly to bring everybody from Carroll County who's never seen, too many black people. And I'm not being funny, because this is the reality. Southern Pennsylvania, places like these, they're probably nice kids, but they've never seen people like you and me, or if they have, they've seen them on TV, and in bad situations, so they come in with a built-in bias. Not all, but the idea is there's a recognition that you need to have a diverse department. And so steps are being taken to try to figure out a way to encourage more folks. Like, we need Officer Lee to go out and recruit young kids. I mean, I hate to put more work on you. You got a tough job, and Sergeant Davis, you all have a tough job, but you got to do that. Because the way a lot of kids became good police is because they had a good African-American officer friendly who said, boy, the next time I see you with that Colt 45, I'm gonna smack it over your head. Well, I remember that happened to me. So that's why I went to law school. But you do the same thing. You can encourage these kids to join the department, but some of the onus is on guys like you. Some of the young man is on onus like you. I know he wasn't bad, but I'm glad you raised the issue that you raised in terms of trust with the police department. But hopefully, if you sit through enough of these, if you're persuaded that, wait a minute, things are getting better, but we need guys like you to go out and help get some of these young African-American kids to join the department, because when you do that, then you are addressing the fundamental issue of racism in the department from an employment standpoint.
I just wanted to, I don't know if there was any misconceptions, but I actually worked with Outward Bound during many police briefings. My best friend is a cop. I wrote a book with one of my favorite cops in it, so I know that there are individual great men or women in the police force. My question was, this narrative to always say most of them are good, or this narrative to say not all of them are bad, when we know that some of the good cops, they have hard times with some of their constituents, and they don't always address that or bring it to light. So that's kind of what I'm saying.
No, I understood exactly what you were saying.
Right, that's that whole bad borough concept where, like, we know it's just impossible to have a police force where every officer is bad. It just can't be. But what the consent decree and the findings report from the DOJ lined out right there in plain view is everything that we think is wrong with this police department, and they have to fix it. So I think that's the perception of everything you're saying is why we have this consent decree. And now we have to recognize that it's not a silver bullet, it's not a panacea. There is still work to be done to make this happen. And
one of the things I want you to understand about the consent decree, and again, I'm not Pollyannish. I understand that you can have a policy and it's not always going to work. But there is a very serious policy in this department in internal affairs that says if you as a police officer, you see bad conduct or you're standing by while bad conduct is occurring, not only are you supposed to intervene if you can do it safely, but you're also supposed to report it. And if you don't, guess what? If you're a supervisor, you get charged. So I mean, there are penalties to be paid now. Now, I'm not foolish enough to say that happens and all, but I think when you put that on a policy and you make it a part of the department that you have an obligation to report bad behavior, that's a big step in the right direction. The other thing that it does is any supervisor who retaliates, they'll probably be fired. And so I think that the policies are in place to address the issue that you're talking about. Now, I'm not foolish enough to think that just because there's a policy, it's going to work. But this is where the commissioner comes into play. If you've got a good commissioner and he lets it be known that I'm not taking any bull off anybody. These are the rules of the game, guys. And you either get with the program or get out. And I think we have a good commissioner, and I think he will send those rules down to his deputies. They will send it down to their commanders. The lieutenant and sergeants will get it. Sooner or later, the bad guys who can't conform are gonna retire because they get nice retirement packages.
Yeah, and on Commissioner Harrison, picking up on Ken's point, I mean, he's a big proponent of what's called ethical policing is courageous, right? And he implemented that program. You might have read about it in the Sun. He implemented that program in New Orleans. We don't know, Ken and I don't know whether he has specific plans to implement that here. He's still getting his feet on the ground. He's still trying to learn the department and what the culture of the department is like. But chances are he's going to try to implement that program here too, and the idea of it is to give more teeth to the policies that Ken is talking about, right? To actually instill a culture of good cops reporting out bad cops when they see bad things happening, so that the department's culture can be turned around. And that's not to say that the department's culture is all bad now, it's not. But to root out the elements of the culture that are bad.
So before I bring up Reverend Al to close us out, I just want to remind everybody that this conversation has to continue and this conversation has to grow. So let's make sure everybody signs the sign-in sheet so we can get that information. And it becomes our responsibility as well to make sure we're getting this information out to the community, sharing it with our neighbors, and making sure we all get involved and stay involved. So I want to thank everybody.
Fill out a survey.
Say what?
Fill out a survey.
We got surveys in the back?
Mm-hmm.
So we got surveys in the back. We're gonna teach Donnell that he can speak up. We can hear him. He don't gotta prompt me. But if you can, fill out a survey in the back to make sure that your feedback is getting heard. But on that note, I'm gonna bring up Reverend Al. I appreciate you, big brother.
Thank you. It was good to host this. Definitely good to have you here. Had to have my back to these amazing persons that are leading this effort. We do commend them. It is a job. It is a real job. I just want you to know also that, and Mr. Burris has been leading that effort as the chairperson of our property committee on our trustee board, but he's building out space on our campus for the police officers in this community. There will be one place that we call the police community information center. That's going to be their real special place, and he's spent a little bit more than I wanted to, but he's made it real nice for you. and then the front part of our campus, which really faces Dolphin Street, will be the place where we can have community conversations, and they will be a part of that. So I do commend his work, and I do want you officers, as you know, and you as a consent leaders to know that we are firmly embedded to ensure that this community and the people of this community have a real healthy relationship with our police officers, and we do the things that are nurturing and do the things that are strengthening. Let us pray. We do thank you for this opportunity to come together. We ask that as we leave, we not encounter any kind of tragic situation, that we experience the peace that you promised that surpasses all understanding. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
And thank everybody for showing up tonight.
So for anyone who come around and take a look at the space that we're building out, we'll be able to give you a quick snapshot of what's going on.
Take a second, I'm